Here's the fastest way to get punished at work. Become extremely good at it. Finish tasks faster than expected, clear your plate, show that you can handle the workload, and watch what happens next. More work. Not a promotion, not recognition, not a reward. More work. Every corporate office in the world has the same posters on the walls. Work smarter, not harder. Take ownership. Go the extra mile. These slogans aren't lies exactly, they're just incomplete. What they don't tell you is this: the moment you demonstrate you can absorb more work, you will. Efficiency doesn't buy you time, it buys the company time. Every hour you save gets redirected somewhere, and that somewhere is back to you. The better you absorb work, the more work you get. That's not a bug in the system. That's the system working exactly as designed. Now, most people have figured this out. Not consciously maybe, but behaviorally. A task that takes 2 hours gets stretched across the full day. There's the task itself, then a few emails about the task, a quick alignment call on the task, some spreadsheet formatting around the task, a status update on where the task is, a meeting recap about the status update, and then waiting. Waiting for approval to actually close the task. By 5 p.m., the 2-hour task has occupied a full 8-hour day. This isn't laziness. This is a rational response to a broken incentive structure. You have successfully performed employment, and the numbers tell you just how widespread this has become. According to Gallup, only 20% of employees globally say they are actively engaged at work. In the United States, one of the most productivity-obsessed countries on Earth, that number climbs to 32%. Think about what that actually means. In any given meeting room, the majority of people sitting around that table are not genuinely invested in the outcome. They are present, they are nodding, they are responding to the chat, but they are not engaged. This isn't about work ethic, it's about incentives that have quietly trained people over time to disengage. Time Rescue tracked actual device behavior across thousands of knowledge workers. The average person sits at their desk for 8 hours a day. They are productively using their devices for 2 hours and 48 minutes. The rest is chat notifications, meetings, email, task switching, context switching back from the last context switch. 8 hours present, 2 hours and 48 minutes of productive digital work. This isn't because people are secretly watching Netflix. It's because the modern office generates interruptions at a faster rate than it generates focus. Efficiency isn't just punished by more work, it's structurally undermined by the very environment built around it. So what are large organizations actually optimizing for? Not pure output, not speed, not the best possible outcome. They're optimizing for output, yes, but alongside that, risk mitigation, predictability, documentation, and defensibility. Think of a company as a building with many floors. One floor does the actual work, others manage risk, handle legal, finance, compliance, and management layers that exist to coordinate other management layers. Every decision that enters that building doesn't just get made, it gets approved, reviewed, aligned, documented, and defended. The real question driving most corporate decisions isn't, is this the right call? It's, can we defend this decision 6 months from now? That is a very different optimization target. Processes start out useful. Decide, execute, review. That's a reasonable loop. But processes grow. Approvals get added. Review stages multiply. Committees form to align with the other committees. And at some point, gradually, then suddenly, the process stops serving the work. The work starts serving the process. What was once a 3-step cycle becomes a flowchart that requires its own full-time administrator. Nobody designed it this way. Nobody sat down and said, let's make this as inefficient as possible. It happened the way most organizational problems happen. One reasonable decision at a time, compounding into something collectively unreasonable. Cyril Northcote Parkinson wrote about this in 1955. Work expands to fill the time available for its completion. Give a team 2 weeks to finish a report, and it will take 2 weeks. complete with multiple revision rounds, stakeholder reviews, and a final version that gets renamed Final, then Final V2, then Final V2 Updated, then Final Use This. Give them 2 days, and it gets done in 2 days. This isn't about effort. It's about what happens to extra time inside an organization. Extra time doesn't stay empty. It gets converted into process, into meetings, into alignment calls about the alignment call. Parkinson wasn't describing lazy individuals. He was describing a systemic law of organizational gravity. Walk through most open-plan offices, and what you see is motion. Constant, impressive-looking motion. People carrying documents, joining calls, sending updates, attending briefings on the briefing. It looks productive, the way an ant colony looks productive. Everyone is moving. Everyone appears to have somewhere to be. But zoom out, and you start to notice something. Some of those documents are just looping back to the person who created them. The slide deck gets sent, reviewed, revised, resent, re-reviewed, and returned. The KPI update passes through 4 people before reaching the person who wrote the original KPI. Activity is not the same as value, and in many organizations, the two have become nearly impossible to tell apart. In 2013, Yahoo made headlines when CEO Marissa Mayer ended remote work for all employees. The memo was blunt. People needed to be physically present. Collaboration happens in hallways. Innovation requires proximity. You need to see people to know they're working. The logic was a perfect encapsulation of a very old corporate instinct. When output is hard to measure, companies measure presence. Visibility becomes a proxy for performance. Being seen at your desk, badge swiped into the building, coffee cup on the table, these become signals of engagement, whether or not they have anything to do with actual output. Yahoo's challenges ran far deeper than any remote work policy, but the instinct behind that memo, that instinct is everywhere. Here's the core tension. What companies can see is not always what creates value. They can see hours logged, badge swipes, cameras on in video calls, Slack response times. They cannot easily see deep thinking, the problem solved on a walk, the insight that came after a night's sleep. So organizations end up rewarding what they can observe, visible effort, documented activity, demonstrable presence, over what actually moves things forward.
When output is hard to measure, companies measure presence, and employees rationally optimize for what they're being measured on. Stanford economist Nicholas Bloom ran some of the most rigorous workplace studies in recent years. In one experiment, employees who worked from home 2 days a week showed no damage to performance reviews, no damage to promotion rates, and employee resignations dropped by 33%. The presence wasn't producing the value was being produced with or without it. This isn't an argument for remote work over office work. It's a data point about what happens when you remove presence as the primary performance signal. The work, it turns out, still gets done. Not all slack is waste. A machine running at 100% capacity has no ability to absorb a spike. Any unexpected load breaks it. Organizations need buffer, unused capacity that can flex when things go wrong, when priorities shift, when the unexpected happens. The question is when buffer becomes bureaucracy. Buffer looks like this: a team that can absorb an urgent project because they aren't already running at 110%. Bureaucracy looks like this: 3 rounds of approval for a decision one person should be empowered to make in an afternoon. Buffer is resilience. Too much buffer is bureaucracy. The difference is whether that slack is available to absorb real shocks or whether it's been quietly colonized by process that now exists only to serve itself. Here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. A lot of organizational complexity exists not because it creates value, but because it creates coordination. And coordination creates roles. Roles create departments. Departments create org charts, and org charts create the need for even more coordination. Your unnecessary process may be someone else's entire job description. The approval workflow you find absurd is the thing that justifies a team of 4 people. The status report you think nobody reads is the foundation of someone's quarterly review. Complexity isn't always the enemy. Sometimes it's the glue holding large distributed organizations together, which means the people inside it have very rational reasons to protect it, even when, from the outside, it looks like pure waste. So people adapt. Finish a task in 2 hours and the next one lands immediately. So you learn. You schedule the completion email for 4:47 p.m. You let the documents sit in drafts until it looks like it took effort. You spread the work across the calendar so it reads as appropriately difficult. This is not a character flaw. This is individually rational behavior inside a system that has taught you, through direct experience, exactly what happens when you move too fast. Individually rational, collectively absurd. Every person protecting themselves from punishment, the entire organization running slower because of it. So here's where we land. The company wants to optimize output and builds processes that slow it down. Managers want to demonstrate control and create overhead that reduces it. Employees want to protect their capacity and conceal a speed that could benefit everyone. Each group is protecting something rational, and together they produce a system that is collectively irrational. The hamster wheel isn't a metaphor for cruelty, it's a metaphor for emergence, the way individually sensible decisions compound into something no one actually chose and no one actually wants. The wheel keeps spinning not because anyone built it to, but because visible efforts in too many organizations still matters more than actual value. Don't be the fastest runner in a race designed to never end.